Alperen Sengun is poised to go off in the next season. Right now, he has been dominating the EuroCup, sending a message not just to the NBA, but to the world and its best basketball superstars. Last year, Alperen Sengun earned his first All-Star appearance, was in the playoffs for the first time, and I think he might just be poised for a Nikola Jokic-esque leap. His stats are actually kind of similar to a young Joker, but now he has a better teammate that either of them has ever had before in Kevin Durant. Now, Shingun's stats didn't make a drastic leap from the 2024 season, but as I said, it was his first All-Star and playoff appearance. The Rockets won 11 more games, and Shingun played in more games than he ever has before. And he did all of this while improving on the defensive side of the ball. For the first time in his career, Alperen Sengun was positive on both sides of the court. Last year, he had a plus-minus of about -4 points on the opposing team per 100 possessions, which is pretty solid. However, in the playoffs against the Golden State Warriors, that number jumped to -20 points per 100 possessions, which is absolutely insane. While his blocks and steals do remain the same, his on-off rating, his net defensive rating, his defensive win shares, and his defensive box plus-minus are the best that they have ever been. And alongside that, we also saw Shingun play alongside another center in Steven Adams. Now, he and Adams were actually one of the best duos in the league despite being a non-conventional pairing. When together in the playoffs last season, they had a net rating of plus 18 points per 100 possessions. 18 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs is absolutely crazy. Want to know what's crazier is what they did in the regular season, where they had a plus-minus of 30 points per 100 possessions. Now, it's on a low volume, of course, only playing about 150, 160 minutes. However, that is still incredibly promising and puts him as one of the best duos in the entire NBA. So this shows that Shingun can clearly play alongside a larger player, but now he's going to get a player who has that size, being near 7 foot. But of course, Kevin Durant can space out the floor and he can create his own shot. And if we want to see height, I would not be surprised if Ime Udoka ever tried out a Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Steven Adams, and Alperen Sengun lineup. Just imagine the defense and rebounding on a team like that. And of course, that would still be a decent spacing team as well. And let's talk about the spacing of the Rockets for a second. So last year, the Houston Rockets were 21st in three-pointers made, as well as their three-point efficiency. However, despite being in the bottom 10 of threes in the entire NBA, their offense ranked 13th in the NBA. That offense that was 13th in the league would go to the 7th best in the league when Shingun was on the court. And everything that I'm saying, it's not just a blind statement. I'm not just sitting here and reading off the numbers and calling it a day. So I went back and looked at mostly this playoff series against the Golden State Warriors to see what Shingun's strengths and weaknesses were and to see how a guy like Kevin Durant can fit on the team. And spoiler alert, they're going to be incredible, not just because Kevin Durant is a good player, but it's because he's a good fit. So when we talk about the best playmaking big men in the NBA right now, the big three, of course, is Alperen Sengun, Domantas Sabonis, and Nikola Jokic. Jokic is possibly the greatest passer of all time, and I don't think that Shingun is ever going to reach that level, but I do think he could be a very high-level passer and generate even more plays than what he is doing right now. But what is something that all three of these guys have in common is that they are not just good passers, but they are good playmakers, and by doing that, they are great in handoffs and in the two-man game. Domantas Sabonis, of course, is one of the better handoff players we've ever seen, and Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray is a legendary handoff duo, which I would argue they might just be one of the best two-man games we've ever seen. Now, Alperen Sengun does this, but he hasn't really had an elite guy to hand the ball off to yet. Last year, we saw a lot of those actions with Fred VanVleet, and VanVleet had a pretty rough season, but he did do a little bit better, at least the playoffs, shooting around 43% from three. And Alperen Sengun has mastered the art of the handoff. He is great in DHOs, he's great at countering, he's great at really reading and reacting to the defense, and a lot of what he does, those aren't pre-made plays. We're not just talking about a simple play where the Rockets are trying to get a handoff. These are in the middle of a play. These are instant read and reactions. This is just almost basketball instinct, not something that they talk about. And just look at these plays with Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun. This is very hard to guard because the offense isn't talking about and they aren't trying to create these plays when they're walking up the court. So Alperen Sengun made handoffs and the two-man game work with Fred VanVleet, who, like I said, was not great last year. Now he is going to get a guy like Kevin Durant. So let's see what Kevin Durant did in those kind of scenarios. Last year, Kevin Durant sat in around the 66th percentile in scoring both in the pick and roll and in handoff situations. The last time we ever saw Durant with a high-level playmaking big man was back in the 2018-19 season on the Golden State Warriors when his teammate was Draymond Green. Of course, this was pre-injury as well, but alongside Draymond Green and the Warriors, Kevin Durant was in the 85th percentile of handoffs and pick and roll scoring. Now look at the situation he's in. Yes, it's post-injury, but he's not playing with the ghost of Blake Griffin or LaMarcus Aldridge. He's playing with one of the best playmaking centers that we have ever seen, who is just about to enter into his prime. So Shingun is about to receive the best possible handoff receiver you could ask for. Someone who can make plays of his own, someone who can isolate on his own, he can drive to the rim, he can spot up, he can pull up, he can do everything as needed because Kevin Durant is one of the greatest scorers of all time, and now he is going to get an elite guy to hand the ball off and do a pick and roll with. And of course, when Shingun is having two-man action with a guy like Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Fred VanVleet, whoever the Rockets have, really, a lot of good young players, whenever we see Shingun in that action, now he's going to have Kevin Durant to space out the floor or Kevin Durant as a backup option. Defenses aren't going to be able to guard the two-man game as easily as they did before. So I'm calling it right now. I think Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun are going to be incredible together. I think Durant is going to help make Shingun a better player, and I think Shingun is going to make Durant, I think he's going to help out his longevity of his career, and I think he's going to make Durant put up another elite season at 37 years old. But Alperen Sengun can do more than just hand the ball off or do a pick and roll. Unlike many other centers in the league, he is actually incredibly good at what is called an inverted pick and roll. That is basically where instead of a big man setting a screen for a guard or a small player is setting a screen for the big man, and he is the one navigating through a pick and roll. For his size, Alperen Sengun is a pretty solid ball handler, and I actually think he moves pretty well and has a relatively tight dribble. And this did pass the stats test and the eye test as well, as we did see a lot of inverted pick and rolls against the Warriors, and that got Fred VanVleet a lot of good shots. I also think we could see this action ran with a guy like Amen Thompson as well, and just imagine those two guys running towards the rim. Last year, Alperen Sengun was in the 95th percentile of scoring as a pick and roll ball handler. Not as a screener, as a pick and roll ball handler. That is insane for a big man. And Fred VanVleet, a guy who's like 6'1", 6 foot barely, he was in the 90th percentile of pick and roll men. So the guy setting the screen, that is absolutely insane. Now, of course, this was on a low volume for both players, but they were both incredibly efficient at this action. Now imagine Kevin Durant setting that screen. Now imagine Kevin Durant on the spacing. Imagine just all the things that can be done when you put these two guys together. And we know that Kevin Durant can be on both sides of a pick and roll, and Alperen Sengun can be on both sides of the pick and roll. Hell, even Fred VanVleet can apparently be on both sides of a pick and roll. So you add in this inverted pick and roll, and that is just another layer of his playmaking. Of course, he's got the flashy passes. He's got that Jokic-esque ability to find people, and I don't think he's ever going to be at the Joker's level, but I think he could still be a great playmaker, especially because of a lot of his stats are mimicking what the Joker did in the past. The only better passing center in the NBA right now is Domantas Sabonis, and you can kind of go either way. I haven't really watched Sabonis enough yet to make that exact decision, but at the very worst, Alperen Sengun is the third best passer in the NBA amongst centers. But right now, we've only talked about his passing and playmaking. We aren't talking about something that he is absolutely elite at, and that is his ability to score in the post. So across the entire NBA, Alperen Sengun is 4th in post scoring, but he could be so much better at this. But currently, he is statistically a better post scorer than guys like Giannis, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, and even Victor Wembanyama. It's like he has a post control rating of 99 in NBA 2K. He's great at drop steps, he's got a good post spin, he's got a good post drive, he's got a counter basically to everything, and he loves to use shoulder fakes that throw the defense off guard. The other thing that makes Shingun such a good post scorer is because of his playmaking. Now we see Shingun in pick and rolls, inverted pick and rolls, dribble handoffs. This all causes the defense to have to rotate and switch, so a lot of times we see Shingun matched up against a smaller player. When against a smaller player, it's either barbecue chicken for him at the rim, or the defense has to double team, and we know Shingun is good at finding an open man. So we take a guy who is 4th in post scoring and above a lot of big names, we add in the fact that he is probably the 3rd or even 2nd best passing center in the NBA, who was the #1 option on an improved playoff team last season, And this is a guy who's improved at defense, and he's going to be only 23 years old at the end of next season. But there is still one major flaw in Alperen Sengun's game, and that is just his overall efficiency. Now, Alperen Sengun's assist-to-turnover ratio is not great. It definitely could be a lot better, but I don't think it accurately describes the level of playmaker that he really is. And if you ask a Houston Rockets fan, they will tell you that Shingun saw a lot of double teams and just a lot of defensive attention last year because they didn't really have a high-level number 2 guy. Yeah, Fred VanVleet was there, but he just wasn't as efficient as we've seen him in the past. But the thing that is concerning about Alperen Sengun was his efficiency shooting-wise. So last year, Shingun was 50% from the field, 23% from 3, and 69% from the free throw line. And in the playoffs, that 50% from the field dropped to 45%, which is really bad for a guy that's nearly 7 feet tall. In the regular season, amongst all centers to play at least 70 games, he was the 5th worst field goal percentage in that entire group. That just makes him one of the least efficient centers in the entire NBA. And something like his field goal percentage actually came back to bite the Rockets in the playoffs. So against the Golden State Warriors, both teams scored exactly the same amount of points. Both teams averaged 104 points per game. In games 3 and 4, the Rockets lost by not a lot of points, and they were points that were a lot of Alperen Sengun's fault, really. In those pivotal 2 games, Shingun went 39% from the field in game 3 and 43% in game 4. A lot of misses, and looking over the series, a lot of these are shots that Shingun should have made. It's like a bad touch around the rim, a bad touch kind of around the free throw or like short mid-range area, missing or passing up on an open 3. The Warriors kind of let him shoot, and it worked out for them because Shingun was just not that efficient. And we know Golden State, they don't really have a lot of big elite defensive centers, so this should have been a series for Shingun to take off from that mark. If Shingun can master that Isaiah Hartenstein like push jumper, that little floater, he would be one of the best scorers in the entire NBA. So diving a little bit deeper into Alperen Sengun from the field, so at the restricted area, so within around 2-3 feet, Alperen Sengun shoots 63% from the field. For the top 15 centers at that mark, he actually ranks 5th in attempts, which is pretty solid. However, he is last out of the top 15 players, shooting just that 63% mark. If we look at shots just a little bit farther from that, so still in the paint, but not counting the restricted area, then Shingun is actually 1st in field goals made outside of the restricted area in the paint. But amongst the top 7 centers, he is the 2nd worst from an efficiency standpoint. There are looks available. He's getting shots. He's getting even open shots, and he cannot convert them. And his ability to make these shots is the difference between an all-star and an all-NBA level player, and it's the difference between making it out of the first round or not. I know I've talked about him a few times, but Nikola Jokic, he's obviously one of the greatest, if not the greatest playmaker of all time, but also the Joker can put up an easy 27, 28 points per night. The Joker's efficiency is what gives him the ability to be a good playmaker, and by being a good playmaker, it's what opens up those shots. I don't think he would be a 3-time MVP and an NBA champion if we only saw the Joker scoring maybe 20 points per night. It's his ability to hit shots that makes him a threat, and it allows guys like we've seen Michael Porter Jr. in the past. It'll probably help out Cameron Johnson, and obviously it's helped out Jamal Murray. It even gave a career revival of a guy like Aaron Gordon. I guarantee you that if Shingun was even just maybe shot around just above 50%, he would either average more than 20 points per game, or at an efficient 20 points per game, he would be getting more assists because he would be more of a threat, and that would help out his teammates. And if his teammates are making more shots, then defenses can't pressure Sengun as much, they can't force him to get rid of the ball, and then Shingun can score even more. So his total offensive game from any perspective you look at could be made better if he just becomes more efficient. But I really think Alperen Sengun is going to be more efficient in the next season. He's going into his 5th year, he's getting an elite teammate in Kevin Durant, and a lot of Rockets players are still young and still have huge leaps to make themselves. But what makes me incredibly optimistic about Alperen Sengun is that what he's doing in the EuroCup. So in the EuroCup, like I said, he is sending a message to other players in the league. Right now, he is averaging 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. That's already very good against some of Europe's best competition, which of course includes current and former NBA players. But what makes this really impressive is that Shingun is shooting 62% from the field and 43% from 3. He's increased his volume on 2-pointers and he's become a lot more efficient from it compared to the NBA. He's also shooting double the amount of threes he's done, and he's hitting threes at a good mark. He's shooting around 2 threes per game at a 43% mark. That is a very, very good mark for a center. But the thing is his teams have been winning, and his plus minus shows his dominance on both ends of the ball, and it's a lot better than some other NBA players. In fact, it's actually better than Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic himself, Lauri Markkanen, and Deni Avdija. Shingun is not just having a good performance. He's not just an NBA player dominating in Europe. He is being better or at the level of NBA superstars while winning games and showing an increase in every single aspect of his game. He's not just amongst the league's best, he's amongst Europe's best, and he's amongst the world's best. This is the perfect storm for Alperen Sengun. He is hitting that right time where he's going to be only 23 years old, but he is clearly showing an improvement, dominating the EuroCup, and now he is getting Kevin Durant to help take pressure off of him, operate a lethal 2-man game with, and space out the floor. Shingun is becoming more efficient, he's a better defender, and all while being the center of one of the better offenses in the league, a top 10 offense when he is on the floor. And I haven't mentioned it just because rebounding isn't as interesting, but Alperen Sengun ranked 15th in his rebounding rate, so the percentage of possessions that ends up with a rebound, he was 15th in the NBA, so he is a above average rebounder, I would say. He can get better at that, but he's still an above average rebounder, and that he could probably get better depending on what happens with Steven Adams next year. But I would honestly say that every single part of Shingun's game now is at the very least good, if not great, if not elite. Now he's going to extend the career of Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant I think is going to help him reach that next milestone. This is the perfect year for Alperen Sengun to make that leap from an all-star to possibly an all-NBA level player. And if we can see Shingun be in that all-NBA level conversation, then I think it's more than possible for the Rockets to be one of, if not the best teams in the NBA. Shingun is going to be elite next season, and there is nothing your favorite team can do about it. If you like this video, you know what to do, but that is it for this one, and I will catch you guys all later.